So we are going to finish up the chapter today. Part of your assignment today is going to be on kites like we're doing. And then you're gonna have a part of your assignment that's a review from what we have been doing. So today what we're gonna do is talk about kites and just super quick. So kites are the last thing that we're gonna talk about, and we are going to draw one thing on this, so make sure you have that out. I kinda wanna show you guys how all of this fits together. So basically what happens is you have quadrilaterals, which is any four-sided figure, and from that you have three different types, okay? One is your parallelograms, and that's when both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. And then you could have a parallelogram that has four right angles, and that would be a rectangle. Or you could have a parallelogram that has four congruent sides, and that would be a rhombus. And then if something is a rectangle and a rhombus, it would be a square. So we spent most of the chapter going through this part. Yesterday we talked about how a trapezoid is different than a parallelogram. In a parallelogram, both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. And in a trapezoid, remember, only one pair of opposite sides are parallel, okay? And then if your trapezoid had congruent legs, it was an isosceles trapezoid. So that's what we learned yesterday. And then today what we're gonna learn is about kites. And basically what a kite looks like is kind of like the standard kite we think of when we think of a kite. And in a kite we're gonna talk about today, those two sides are congruent as well as these two. So I basically just think of it as the two short ones are congruent as well as the two long ones are congruent, okay? So that's how this kind of all fits together. In a kite, there are no sides that are opposite each other that are parallel. So nothing's parallel in a kite, okay? But in a kite, by definition, the two short sides are congruent as well as the two long sides are congruent. So that's the main definition of a kite. And then what I'd like you guys to do on your cheat sheet for the kite is draw the diagonals. Yep.
So when we have those diagonals, does that divide it into two isosceles triangles?
They're not isosceles because you don't, these two aren't congruent, those two aren't congruent, these two aren't congruent, and these two aren't congruent. So none of your two, they're right triangles, but they're not isosceles.
Sure.
Okay? Like, were you talking about this big triangle?
Yeah, like ABD and
Yes,
CD.
that is an isosceles triangle, but
That's
we
what-
don't use that.
Oh, okay.
But it is true, yes. Okay, so now you guys drew your diagonals, and what I want you to do on those diagonals is draw how these four are gonna be right angles, because in a kite, diagonals are perpendicular. Okay? So that's one thing we know. So these four little ones are all right triangles. So you're gonna notice we do Pythagorean theorem a lot today again. All right. Now, another thing that's true about a kite is one pair of opposite angles are congruent. Just one. And the ones that are congruent, make sure you pay attention to this. Do you see how K and M are opposite each other and J and L are opposite each other? the ones that are congruent are the ones that are in between the two sides that are not congruent. So notice this angle is between one side with 1 dash and one side with 2. That's gonna be congruent to its opposite angle, which is between 1 dash and 2. The two angles that are between the same amount of dashes are not congruent. So it's only one pair of opposite angles are congruent. And basically, every problem we do today deals with this, or a lot of them are gonna be Pythagorean theorem. Okay? So let's go to our first problem. And it says, find the measure of angle JRK. What would that angle right there be? 90 degrees. Those are right angles, so that one's not too bad at all. Now this one here says RJ is 3 and RK is 10. Find JK right here, okay? So what we would have to do there is think of this as a right triangle and use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now, when you do that, c is always across from the right angle, and then I'm gonna let the 3 be my a and the 10 be my b. So I can say a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A is 3 squared, b is 10 squared, and c is x squared. Okay? Now, 3 squared is 9, plus 10 squared is 100. That equals x squared. So this is 109 equals x squared. And we're gonna take the square root of that. Now this one is gonna be a decimal, so you will get decimals with this. And we're gonna just round it to 2 decimal places. So if I go to my calculator, actually you'll see I did this last hour. The square root of 109, we're gonna round to 2 decimal places, so it's 10.44. So whenever you have to round in this class, always do it to 2 decimal places. Okay. Now if I look at C, it says GHJ up here is a 90-degree angle. And then GKJ down here is 110 degrees. And they want us to find HGK right here, this angle. Okay? Now, I was telling you guys that only one pair of opposite angles in a kite are equal. And if you guys look at this, you can tell these are the 2 sides that would be congruent, and these are the 2 sides that would be congruent. And the ones that are equal or congruent are always the ones that are in between the 2 sides that are not equal. So if this is x, that's x, okay? You also would know those are the 2 equal ones because these 2 are not equal. So if 2 of them aren't equal, you know the other 2 are. Now you could do this one of 2 ways. One way you could do this one is you could set up an algebra equation and you could go x plus 90 plus 110 equals, and when you add those 4 angles together, it equals 360. Okay? Now, x plus x is 2x. 90 plus 110 is 200, and that equals 360. Then we're going to subtract 200, and we get 2x equals 160. divide by 2, and x is 80, okay? Now, that is angle HGK, that is my x. Now, you could do that one without using algebra. So I'm gonna show you how you could do that. If you would rather not do algebra, do you guys know that a 4-sided figure, how many degrees it should add up to? Anyone know? It's 360, okay? So if you know that, which I guess I already did that, it equals 360 here. So any 4-sided figure always adds up to 360. So here's how you could do it if you'd want to do it without. You could just go to your calculator and go 90 plus 110. You don't have to show any work for this, and that's 200. Then, because we know the 4 add up to 360, we can go 360 minus 200, which is 160. That's what those two add up to. So I can divide by 2, and that gives me 80. So you're welcome to do these either way, whatever makes more sense to you. Okay? All right, so if I look at this one, they tell me HJ right here is 7, and they're asking for HG. Is that easy? What would it be? It would just be 7. Those two are equal, so this is 7. Okay. Then if I look at E, they say HG is 7, and GR is 5. Find HR. Do you guys know how I do that one? It would be just that this is a right triangle, here's my right angle, and I can use Pythagorean theorem, okay? So what I'm gonna do there is my C is always opposite the right angle. I'm gonna call this A and this B. So if I go to do that, I can say A squared plus B squared equals C squared. My A is X squared. My B is 5 squared. And my C is 7 squared. Okay? Now, 5 squared is 25. 7 squared is 49. And then what I would do is subtract that 25, okay? And I would get x squared equals 24. And then again, you're gonna take the square root of that and round it to 2 decimal places. And when you take the square root of 24, it's actually 4.898. So what would that 89 get rounded to? What happens if this 9 has an 8 in front of it?
It would be 90.
Yeah, that 89, if you have to round that up, goes up to 90. So it'd be 4.90. You don't have to include that 0, but you can. Okay, so it'd be 4.9 or 4.90. You don't need the 0 there. So that 89 gets rounded up to 90. All right, now let's look at this one. And it says that angle GHJ right here is 52. And GKJ right here is 95. If these two are not equal, that makes these two equal. So again, you could add 52 and 95 together, subtract from what? Do you remember?
360.
And then you have 2 that would equal that, so you divide by 2. But if you don't, you know, if that's hard or you won't remember that, just go x plus 52 plus 95, and the four angles of a four-sided figure add up to 360. Now 1x plus 1x is 2x. 52 plus 95 is 147, and that equals 360. Then we're going to subtract 147, and we get that 2x is 213. And then we're going to divide by 2, and x is 106.5. Okay, and they asked us for angle HGK, which we called x. Now, if we go to this page, they tell us we have a kite, and they want us to find the measure of angle X, Y, Z right here. Okay, yeah.
Because we already know 3 of the angles, we can just add up 73, 121, and 121 because angle WZY is congruent to angle WXY. So we can subtract the sum of those 3 numbers, which is 315, from 360 and get our last angle.
Yes, you are correct. So remember the 2 angles that are between the 2 sides that are not the same are the ones that are equal. Okay, so these are both 121. So I can add, and you don't have to show the work for this, but you can add 121 plus 121 plus 73, which is going to be 315, I believe. And then you would just subtract that from 360 because that's what the 4 angles in a kite add up to. That's what the 4 angles in any four-sided figure add up to. Okay. Now if we look at B down here, okay, they tell us that this side is 6, this side is 8, and then they're telling us that NP right here is what I want to find. Yeah.
We can use the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of MN.
Yep.
And because it's congruent to NP, whatever the answer to that is just the same to NP.
Yep. These 2 sides are equal. So if I find this side, okay, whatever I get for this side is what X is going to equal. So really what I could think of is these are both really X. Okay? So what I'm going to do is Pythagorean theorem there again. And when I do that, across from my right angle is C. A and B don't matter. I'm going to have my 6 be the A, my 8 be the B. Okay? So if I do A squared plus B squared equals C squared, my A is 6 squared, my B is 8 squared, my C is X squared. 6 squared is 36, 8 squared is 64, and that equals X squared. This is 100. And then I have to take the square root, and the square root of 100 is 10. And then like we talked about, if this side is 10 and these 2 sides are equal, that means this side is 10. So that would be my answer. Okay. Now if we look at this one, would E be congruent to C, or would D be congruent to B? C and E would be the same because they're between the 2 sides that are not equal. So this would be 130. D is what they're asking us for, angle CDE, okay? So what I would do, add up 130 plus 130 plus 64, which is 324. And then I would just subtract that from 360 which I'm gonna get 36 for an answer, and that's B over here. Okay? Then if we go to our last page here, what do I know about angle B and angle D, Anna?
They're the same.
They are the same. So I would go 36 plus 70, which is 106. And then I would take if I want to do it the shortcut way, this is how I would do it. Then I would take 360 minus 106, which is 254. And then I would divide that by 2 to find what one of them is, which is 127. Does the shortcut way make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
It does? Okay. All right, so your assignment for today, like I said, one of them is on kites. So this part is on kites. This is a review part. And by the way, number 10, just so you guys know, somebody asked about that one last hour. Number 10 is actually an isosceles trapezoid, so don't let that confuse you. That one I really should have assigned yesterday instead of today. So when you get to number 10, it's an isosceles trapezoid.